Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. This is the 12th lecture of a series of video lectures of 10th grade biology and the last one of the 12th chapter. In this video, we will discuss the endocrine system, which is actually chemical coordination involving the chemicals that regulate the body metabolism. Along with it, we are going to discuss the last topic of the chapter, the nervous disorders. So let's start. Endocrine system consists of endocrine glands. So we need to know what are endocrine glands. In our body we have two types of glands, exocrine glands and endocrine glands. Exocrine glands are those which have a duct. They produce their secretion and transport it through a duct. For example, pancreas produces pancreatic juice that is carried along by the pancreatic duct. Endocrine glands are ductless glands. They do not have a duct attached to them. They pour their secretion directly into the bloodstream. So the word endocrine is derived from Greek words endo, meaning within, and krinis, meaning to secrete. So they secrete their secretions from within, and blood, it carries it. There is no duct attached to them. The hormones produced by endocrine glands regulate metabolism, growth and development, tissue function, reproduction, sleep, etc. The glands and organs that make hormones and release them directly into the blood so that they can travel to tissues and organs all over the body are known as endocrine glands. The endocrine system affects almost every organ and cell in the body. Let's start discussing important endocrine glands given in the book. But before that, we need to know what are the target cells or target sites. So the hormones, they act on other cells or other organs. So those particular organs on which hormones act are known as target sites. So starting with pituitary gland, it's a pea-shaped gland attached to the hypothalamus of brain. Some hormones of this gland act directly on various tissues of the body while others act as tropic hormones. Tropic hormones are the hormones which have other endocrine glands as their target. That means the secretion of pituitary gland is going to regulate other endocrine glands. That's why it is termed as master endocrine gland. So here you can see the two lobes of pituitary gland. Anterior lobe is called adenohypophysis and posterior lobe is called neurohypophysis. Both of these lobes, they release different hormones which regulate the body functions. Both the lobes of pituitary gland release different hormones. A few of them are following. Anterior pituitary gland produces thyroid stimulating hormone and somatotropin hormone, while oxytocin and vasopressin are produced from posterior pituitary. Somatotropin hormone or growth hormone is a major participant in the control of several complex physiological processes, including growth and metabolism. Its secretion is quite tricky. Gigantism is the result of excessive growth hormone secretion that begins in young children or adolescents. So here he is Sultan Kozan from Turkey, and it's a case of gigantism. He is 8.1 feet. If the production of hormone is diminished during growing age, the rate of growth decreases and it results in dwarfism. So here you can see He Pingping of China. He was the case of dwarfism. His height was 2.5 feet. Acromegaly results from excessive secretion of growth hormone in adults. Usually it's the result of benign pituitary tumors. The onset of this disorder is typically insidious, occurring over several years. Clinical signs of acromegaly include overgrowth of extremities, soft tissue swelling, abnormalities in jaw structures, and cardiac diseases. Most of you know this man, the great Kali. He is a case of acromegaly. Another important hormone secreted by anterior pituitary lobe is the TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. It stimulates thyroid gland to secrete its hormone. Other hormones of anterior lobe influence reproductive organs and also control adrenal glands. Then comes the posterior pituitary. We have two hormones from posterior pituitary in our book. One is vasopressin and second is oxytocin. Vasopressin increases the rate of reabsorption of water from nephrons. So you can correlate it with the previous chapter which we studied about the functioning of kidneys. When we have low amount of water in body fluids, pituitary gland secretes vasopressin and so more reabsorption of water occurs from nephrons into the blood. In this way, body retains water and less amount of urine is produced. On the other hand, when body fluids have more than normal water, there is a decline in the secretion of this hormone. If pituitary gland does not secrete this hormone in the required amount, less water is reabsorbed from nephrons and there is excessive loss of water through urine. This condition is known as diabetes insipidus, which is obviously different from diabetes mellitus. Oxytocin stimulates the contraction of uterus walls in mothers for childbirth and is necessary for the ejection of milk from mammary glands. Thyroid gland, the second endocrine gland, is the largest endocrine gland in human body. It is present in neck region below larynx and produces a hormone thyroxine. Thyroxine increases the breakdown of food and release of energy in body. It is also responsible for the growth of the body. There are two conditions. Hypothyroidism is caused by underproduction of thyroxine. It is characterized by low energy production in body and slowing down of heartbeat. Hyperthyroidism is caused by overproduction of thyroxine. Its symptoms are increase in energy production, increased heartbeat, frequent sweating, and shivering of hands. The thyroid gland produces another hormone called calcitonin. It decreases the level of calcium ions in the blood and promotes the absorption of calcium from blood into bones. Thyroid gland requires iodine for the production of thyroxine. If a person lacks iodine in diet, thyroid gland cannot make its hormone, and in this condition, thyroid gland enlarges and swells up. This is known as goiter. So here you can see the normal or healthy thyroid gland, while in the next figure, this enlarged thyroid gland indicates the goiter. And in actual, it looks like this. Parathyroid glands. These are four glands situated on the posterior side of thyroid gland. So here in this figure you can see the back side of thyroid gland and these yellow are the parathyroid glands. They produce a hormone known as parathormone. Parathormone increases the level of calcium ions in the blood. When there is increased production of parathormone, more than normal calcium salts are absorbed from the bones and added to the blood. Consequently, the bones become brittle. If there is deficiency in the production of parathormone, blood calcium level falls. It leads to tetany, which affects the functioning of muscles. Adrenal glands. Two adrenal glands are situated above kidneys. Here you can see these yellow colored are adrenal glands situated on each kidney. Each adrenal gland consists of two parts. The outer part is cortex and inner part is medulla. The adrenal cortex secretes many hormones called corticosteroids which maintain the balance of salts and water in the blood. Adrenal medulla produces hormone called epinephrine or adrenaline in response to stress. It prepares our body to overcome emergency situations. Therefore, adrenaline is also termed as emergency hormone. So let's see how it works. When a person experiences fear, anger or anxiety, the rate of heartbeat increases, blood pressure increases, blood flow to the limbs increases, blood flow to the alimentary canal and skin is reduced. Such changes prepare the body to face any emergency situation. We did discuss this fight and flight situation in sympathetic nervous system previously. So recall it and develop the relationship between adrenaline and fight or flight response, which you can see over here. It prepares you either to fight with the situation or to fly from the situation. Pancreas. It's a very unusual organ. It has two functions. The major part of pancreas is exocrine, which secretes digestive enzymes through a duct into the small intestine. But some portions of pancreas serve as ductless or endocrine glands. This portion contains group of endocrine cells referred to as islets of Langerhans. These islets secrete two hormones, insulin and glucagon, which regulate blood glucose level. Glucagon influences the liver to release glucose in blood, and so the blood glucose concentration rises. While insulin works opposite to it, it influences the liver to take excess glucose from the blood, and so the blood glucose concentration falls. If a person's pancreas does not make normal quantity of insulin, the blood glucose concentration rises and we say that the person has diabetes mellitus. This diabetes mellitus is different from diabetes insipidus, which we discussed earlier. Persons with diabetes have loss of body weight, weakening of muscles and tiredness. The disease can be controlled by insulin administration in the form of tablets or injections. Here in this figure you can see the section of pancreas with islets of Langerhans. This blue colored group of cells is islet of Langerhans, and here you can see alpha cells a bit dark blue in color and beta cells lighter blue in color. Alpha cells release glucagon while beta cells release insulin. Here you can see the blood glucose level in different conditions. Blood glucose concentration (BGC) test. The amount of glucose in blood is measured by this test. It is used to diagnose diabetes. Blood glucose may be measured on a fasting basis, collected after an 8 or 10-hour fast, or randomly anytime and after meal. The results of some BGC tests are given below. So here you can see blood glucose after 8 to 10 hours of fasting. If the value is 70 to 99 milligram per 100 ml, it is considered to be normal. From 100 to 125 milligram per 100 ml, it is pre-diabetic. It means there are chances that you, in later stages, you can develop diabetes. And if it is from 126 milligram per 100 ml and above, then you are diabetic. After 2 hours and 75 gram glucose drink, if the blood glucose level is less than 140 milligram per 100 ml, then you are normal. From 140 to 200 milligram per 100 ml, you are pre-diabetic, and if it is 200 milligram per 100 ml, then you are diabetic. Gonads or reproductive organs are the endocrine glands. Testes and ovaries are the male and female reproductive organs, respectively. In addition to the production of gametes, gonads also secrete hormones called sex hormones. Testes secrete hormones, example, testosterone, which is responsible for the development of male secondary sex characters, such as growth of hair on face and coarseness of voice, etc. Ovaries secrete estrogen and progesterone, which are responsible for the development of female secondary characters such as development of breasts, etc. Secondary sex characters are the characters which are not present at the time of birth, but they are developed at the later stages. After learning some of the endocrine glands, we need to understand how this endocrine system works. It is basically based on feedback mechanism. Endocrine glands do not secrete their hormones at a constant rate. This rate varies with the needs of the body. The feedback mechanism means regulation of a process by the output of the same process. So it is of two types, positive feedback and negative feedback. So if the output favors the reaction to proceed in forward direction, we call it positive feedback. And if the output exerts a negative effect, then it is known as negative feedback. In negative feedback, the output of a process decreases or inhibits the process. This mechanism works to return a condition towards its normal value. For example, when the blood glucose concentration rises, pancreas secretes insulin. It decreases the blood glucose concentration. Decline in the blood glucose concentration to a normal set point inhibits the secretion of insulin. As you see over here, similarly, when blood glucose concentration drops below normal, pancreas secretes glucagon. It raises the blood glucose concentration. In this case, rise in blood glucose concentration to a normal set point inhibits the secretion of glucagon. In other words, the blood glucose concentration, the output, controls the process. That is the secretion of insulin and glucagon. So this is an example of negative feedback. Positive feedback occurs when the original effect of the stimulus is enhanced by the output. In our body, positive feedback can be understood by milk ejection and release of oxytocin by posterior pituitary. When baby suckles, it sends impulses to the brain. Hypothalamus signals posterior pituitary to release oxytocin, which stimulates the mammary glands for milk ejection, and baby continues to suckle and feeds. This continuous suckling promotes the milk ejection, and this is an example of positive feedback. So we have studied both the coordination systems, nervous coordination and chemical coordination. So this is a comparison, and you yourself can compare the two systems. The receptors, brain and spinal cord as the coordinator in nervous coordination, and the effectors are muscles or glands. And in case of chemical coordination, receptors are the body parts, the chemicals are released into the blood, the endocrine glands are the coordinators which affect either the bones, liver, or the target organs, and response is shown. Disorders of the nervous system. These are of two types. Vascular disorders, which are due to any disturbance in the blood supply to the nervous system, and paralysis is its example. While functional disorders are due to the disturbance in nerve impulse generation or its transmission, and epilepsy is the example of functional disorder. Epilepsy is a chronic disorder that causes unprovoked recurrent seizures. A seizure is a sudden rush of electrical activity in the brain. Epilepsy is known as mirgi in Urdu. There are two types of seizures. Generalized seizures affect the whole brain. Focal or partial seizures affect just one part of the brain. A mild seizure may be difficult to recognize. It can last a few seconds, during which you lack awareness. Stronger seizures can cause spasms and uncontrollable muscle twitches and can last a few seconds to several minutes. During stronger seizure, some people become confused or lose consciousness, and afterwards they may not have a memory of it happening. Now, what triggers an epileptic seizure? Some people are able to identify things or situations that can trigger seizures. A few of the most commonly reported triggers are lack of sleep, illness or fever, stress, bright lights, flashing lights or patterns, caffeine, alcohol, medicines or drugs, skipping meals, overeating, or specific food ingredients. Identifying triggers isn't always easy. A single incident doesn't always mean something is a trigger. It is often a combination of factors that trigger a seizure. Now, question is epilepsy hereditary? Epilepsy sometimes run in families. Still, the risk of inheriting the condition is fairly low. Most parents with epilepsy don't have children with epilepsy. That means they can have normal children. Paralysis is the loss of muscle function in part of your body. It happens when something goes wrong with the way messages pass between your brain and muscles. Paralysis can be complete or partial. It can occur on one or both sides of your body. It can also occur in just one area, or it can be widespread. As you see over here, part of face is affected in this man due to paralysis. So you can see this abnormality on his face. Here, a paralyzed person is given assistance to help him walk with the help of a walker and a helper. This ends up chapter number 12, Coordination and Control. And along with it, the first term syllabus of 10th class biology is also ended. Wish you good luck, stay safe, stay home. Allah Hafiz.